Prabhupada. So nice to see you again. And I think, so to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, we are very fortunate to have His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj again with us. Today we will be having the session number 4 on the structural review of the main topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So without much ado, we will straight go to Maharaj to begin the session 4. Maharaj, we will have a 1-hour session of your talk, and then we would like to keep half an hour for the question answer sessions. So that would take from 3:30 your time to 5 o'clock. I hope that will be fine with you. Okay, wonderful. So please, as you go along the session with Maharaj, kindly keep your questions ready. You can send it across, and then we will ask one by one from Maharaj. So Hare Krishna, thank you again, Maharaj. Over to you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Maharaj, we can't hear you. Are you muted, Maharaj? Now Maharaj, if you speak now.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, yes.
Yasvanubhavam akilam stutissaramekam madhyatmadipamatitirtirshatotamundham samsarinam karunaya puranabhutyam tam vyasasunumupayami guruguninam. So I will read today to start this lecture from our little seminar on a very important topic. I will start with the text number 7 of the 10th chapter of second canto. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. I read this verse at the end of my last class, but I will read the verse and purport again because it's relevant to today's discussion. Abhasascha nirodascha yatosti adhyavasyate sashraya paramam brahma paramatmeti sabhyate. This is the definition of ashraya, the 10th topic of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Basically, the definition of where we have to take shelter of. And how we should take shelter in one sense. But it's a definition. It's paribhasha in Srimad-Bhagavatam itself. So, translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the Supreme Source of the cosmic manifestation as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. As you probably noticed, Srila Prabhupada repeats the word supreme 4 times in this translation to stress that this is the supreme object of worship. This is where we should take shelter of. And here is the definition of this supreme shelter or supreme absolute truth. Basically says that what is supreme shelter, what we should worship, what is the object of our worship, that is the source of everything which is there, and the source at the same time is the source or the cause for nirodha or destruction. He is the one from whom everything appears. He is the one who maintains everything. Yataha, Yena, and Nirodha. Nirodha, Yasmin, the one who destroys everything, or the one in whom everything goes in after destruction. So that's the definition of Ashraya. And it is said that this Ashraya is Param Brahma. He is the supreme truth, and he is Paramatma. Paramatmeti Shabdyate. Srila Prabhupada will explain that the word iti implies Bhagavan. He is Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, depending on the angle of vision. Okay, purport of Srila Prabhupada. Synonyms for the supreme source of all energies, as explained in the very beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, are Janmadyasyayataha, Vadanti tattva-vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdyate, called Parabrahma, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So it's basically different nomenclatures for the same entity. It's not different. It's not something different because it's Advaya Gyan. This Vastu is Advaya. It's not different. There is no differentiality within, but it's called differently because there is different angles of vision. And therefore, Prabhupada says, this is the synonyms. This is not different vastus, different entities. This is the same Advaya Jnana Vastu. The word iti used here in this verse, as I said, Paramatmeti Shabdyate, completes the synonyms and thus indicates Bhagavan. This will be further explained in the later verses, but this Bhagavan ultimately means Lord Krishna because the Srimad-Bhagavatam has already accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. The original source of all energies, or the summum bonum, is the absolute truth, which is called Param Brahma, etc. And Bhagavan is the last word of the absolute truth. But even with the synonyms for Bhagavan, such as Narayana, Vishnu, and Purusha, the last word is Krishna. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava Matah Sarvam Pravartate, etc. Besides that, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the representation of Lord Krishna as a sound incarnation of the Lord. Krishna sve dhammapagate dharma jnana diviksaha kalonashta drisham esha puranarka gunoditaha. Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies, and the word Krishna means that. And to explain Krishna, or the signs of Krishna, the Srimad-Bhagavatam has been prepared. The first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this truth is indicated by the questions and answers by Sutta Goswami and great sages like Shona. And in the first and second chapters of the canto, this is explained. In the third chapter, the subject is more explicit, and in the fourth chapter, even more explicit. In the second canto, the absolute truth as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is further emphasized, and the indication is the Supreme Lord, Krishna. The summary of Srimad-Bhagavatam in 4 verses, as we have already discussed, is succinct. This Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate issue, is confirmed by Brahma in his Brahma Samhita as Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchitananda Vigraha. So it is concluded in the 3rd canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. The complete subject matter is elaborately explained in the 10th and 11th cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam. In the matter of the changes of the manus or manvantaras, such as the Swayambhuva Manvantara and Chakshusha Manvantara, as they are discussed in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is indicated. In the 8th canto, the Vaivasvata Manvantara explains the same subject indirectly, and in the 9th canto, the same purport is there. In the 12th canto, the same is further explained specifically regarding to different incarnations of the Lord. Thus, it is concluded by studying the complete Srimad-Bhagavatam that Lord Krishna is the ultimate summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energy. And according to the grades of worshippers, the indications of the nomenclature may be differently explained as Narayana, Brahma, Paramatma, etc. So basically, Srila Prabhupada in this purport is establishing Ashraya as Lord Krishna. The penultimate manifestation of Ashraya as Lord Krishna, and everything else is his partial representation. Anyway, we will describe it in more details in the lecture. Now let's chant. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Vinani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyavi Shatarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivastadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Ajanu Vangutu Bujokana Kavadata Sankirtana Kuparo Kamavaya Tatsu Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yubadharma Vande Jagat Yanta Pravishya Mama Vachanam Prasutam Sanjivaya Takila Shakti Swadam Anyam Chahasta Charana Shravana Dvaga Ranan Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Swasyaste Vishwasya Kala Prasida Tam Jayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodya Manascha Badram Bhajata Kadokshate Aveshya. So we continue with our review of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and today I will start a very short review of the cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam, explaining how all these cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam work together to ultimately explain to us the Ashraya of Krishna. And in fact, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada explains in a very short manner how different cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam ultimately indicate Krishna. So it's very important before we start the whole book to have the complete overview of the book, how it works, and what is the contribution of each canto, and what do we have to understand from each canto. what is the knowledge which we should derive from each canto. So this I will start explaining a little later, but I wanted to refresh a little bit what we spoke last time to maintain the continuity. I explained last time that Lord Brahma read scriptures or Vedas 3 times, and it basically means reading scriptures from 3 different angles of vision. One is Karma Kanda or Karma Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa. When we read it and we only see or extract from the scriptures information which helps us to live happily in this world. The second time when we read scriptures, after trying to live happily in this world and understanding that this is a hopeless endeavor, and no matter how much we try and how diligently we follow all the scriptures, all the minute details of rules and regulations, you know, we will still not be able to avoid old age, disease, and ultimately death. So after reading the scriptures for the first time and extracting this sort of the layer of the meaning, which is there in the scriptures. Scriptures do teach us how to live in this world, how to become relatively happy in this world. That's there. But after reading the scriptures for the first time and taking the first sort of layer of the meaning, we can read the scriptures for the second time. And reading the scriptures for the second time means extracting from the scriptures what they have to say about liberation. This is the second reading, you know, when we become a little more mature and more realistic about the nature of life and less foolish, more experienced, we will get the desire of liberation. And then we'll start reading the scriptures with a different eyes. And by reading the scriptures with a different eyes, we will see different statements in the scriptures. And ultimately, the conclusion which we will come about is, yes, scriptures talk about liberation. But this is not the ultimate meaning of the scriptures. Ultimately, the scriptures want to tell us something else. Shastra wants to tell us something else. And this is the third reading of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is again Uttara Mimamsa, but as we know, there are 2 big schools of Uttara Mimamsa, the Advaita Uttara Mimamsa, Advaita Vedanta, and Dvaita Vedanta. So the third meaning of the scriptures is Bhakti. And the highest manifestation of this is Srimad-Bhagavatam. In Srimad-Bhagavatam, as in all the Shastras, these 3 layers are there. But ultimately, Srimad-Bhagavatam, according to the instruction of Narada Muni, who gave to Vyasadeva, who chastised Vyasadeva and said that you compromise too much. You mix too much of this Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha in all other scriptures. Here, Vyasadeva is trying in a very clear way to explain to us that the ultimate meaning of Shastra is Bhakti. So this is what we were talking about. And I explained last time very elaborately the 10 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam, or the 9 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and how the 9 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam ultimately explain the 10th topic. And it's the design is very simple. Actually, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will say in the commentary to this very verse, he said that the reason why the 10 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam are being explained is just to explain the difference between Jiva and the Lord. And in this way, by pointing out the difference between the Jiva and the Lord, because Jiva cannot create this universe, Jiva cannot destroy this universe, well, destroy maybe. that we are good at. Anyway, so Jiva, everything, the scene for the life of the Jiva is being created by the Lord. Everything is being created by the Lord. So here Srimad-Bhagavatam is explaining this difference, and by explaining this difference, hinting at Bhakti. Because if you understand that you're not independent, that you cannot really live independently and become happy independently of the Lord, and then the next natural conclusion is that you should perform Bhakti, you should serve the source of everything which exists here. So that's basically the implication why these 9 topics are being explained in Srimad-Bhagavatam and how they're being explained. So atra sarga visargascha stanam poshanamutaya amanvantarishnu katha niroda mukti rasaya. So this is this 10 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we already explained in details. And again, as I told last time, when we were discussing this, Srimad-Bhagavatam always has 2 railway, how you say this? Railways? Tracks, 2 tracks, yeah. Srimad-Bhagavatam always describes this in 2 tracks. Srimad-Bhagavatam gives the general description of the Supreme Lord of Ashraya through these different topics. All these topics are just explanation of Ashraya, because the Ashraya is the cause of all these topics, starting with the Sarga or elementary creation. And Srimad-Bhagavatam always explains this Ashraya in 2 tracks. General description, which means God, Ishvara, Bhagavan, Paramatma, whatever you call him. And then very specific description, which is Krishna. Always in Srimad-Bhagavatam, this goes side by side. Very general description of God, and ultimately hinting that behind this general description, there is this beautiful form of Bhagavan, who is Krishna, who is the most attractive personality of God. So this is what we described last time in our discussion. And today I wanted to, very briefly, before we go into the review of the cantos, also tell that besides these 2 levels of, or besides these 3 levels of meaning, if we take specifically Srimad-Bhagavatam, if we take Srimad-Bhagavatam as a scripture, as I said, there are any scripture, any shastra has these 3 layers of meaning. But if we take specifically Srimad-Bhagavatam, in Srimad-Bhagavatam itself, there is 3 layers of meaning which are different. This is again explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because what he gives, how he explains this, he says in Srimad-Bhagavatam itself, in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, there are 3 metaphors. And this is important for us to remember. Srimad-Bhagavatam is compared in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam and in the 12th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam with Deepa, Adhyatma Deepa. Asvanubhavam Akhilam Shrutisara Mekam, Adhyatma Deepa Matitirtir Shatotam Omnam. This is the spiritual lamp. This is the first metaphor. So this first metaphor is certain meaning which we can extract from Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is there in Srimad-Bhagavatam itself. The second metaphor is given actually by Srila Prabhupada in this verse, Krishna Swadam Apagate Dharma Dhyana Didiksaha Kalonashta Drishayasha Puranarka Gunoditaha. So the second comparison, Srimad-Bhagavatam is like sun. So it's a very drastic difference, right? Deepa has some ability to dissipate darkness, but it's limited ability. So in Srimad-Bhagavatam, there are topics which elucidate the reality in a limited way. in a very beautiful but still limited way. And we can read Srimad-Bhagavatam by trying to understand this layer of meaning, and I will explain what it means. But then Srimad-Bhagavatam is like sun, and sun has much greater capacity to illuminate. So that's another deeper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam. When this deeper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam will be revealed to us through our study of Srimad-Bhagavatam, through hearing of Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will see the greater context of life. When we see, when Deepa is illuminating something, we see very limited context. It's good to have Deepa. It's better than to be in darkness, but still it's limited. Sun illuminates everything, and we see everything much more clearly. And the third metaphor in Srimad-Bhagavatam itself is Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Nigamakalpataror Galitam Palam. So, and the third metaphor of Srimad-Bhagavatam is like ripened, juicy fruit. So, these three metaphors, again, explain three kinds of topics in Srimad-Bhagavatam. The first kind of topic gives some spiritual understanding of reality. The second kind of topics or explanation gives much greater understanding of reality. And then the third kind of topics or explanations will give juice, will give you some ras, will give you emotional satisfaction. So, yeah, and this is the three kinds of topics. And when we take the first meaning or the first topics which explain the first meaning, what we will see, what is Deepa? Deepa basically means if there is darkness. In the darkness, we feel fear. We don't know what's going on, and our mind starts imagining all kinds of, produces all kinds of fantasies, and we become scared. And if, you know, some noise is there, we become very scared. So when we get this Deepa, the spiritual knowledge, then immediately the first effect is that you feel some solace, or you feel less fearful. You feel much more confident, and you feel that, you know, it's not so bad. You understand something. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that two topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam among these 10 topics, they are like Adhyatma Deepa, the spiritual knowledge. This is Sarga and Nirodha. Sarga and Nirodha. If we understand these two topics, how this creation came about, how it was created by the Lord, how the elements are created, 10 times of creation which are being described in the third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Well, not 10 times, the first 6 types of creation. When we understand the first 6 types of creation, then and Nirodha is destruction. As it is explained here that Nirodha, oh, well, maybe not here. Nirodha, there are 3 types of Nirodha, 3 types of destruction. And one type of Nirodha, which is very relevant to us, is our own death. This is Nirodha, this is destruction. And why are we so much afraid of death? Because while we are living, we have an illusion of being independent and the illusion of controlling the reality. But at death, we know we lose our power to control. We're completely incapable of controlling everything at the moment of death and after death. And that's why we are so scared. So therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that these two topics, Sarga and Nirodha, This is Adhyatma Deepa, the preliminary knowledge which can give us some relief or some understanding how the reality works, and give us some sort of solace that there is no point of being fearful. Lord is anyway in control. You are anyway not in control. It's just an illusion. You think that you're controlling everything. And the Lord is kind of playing along with your illusion and says, yes, 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 you're great. Yes, my dear sir. But ultimately, if we understand very clearly that, yes, I'm not in control of my birth and I'm not in control of my death, but there is the Lord who is loving, who is very kind, who is very merciful, who is behind this, and then ultimately there is nothing to fear. So this is the first preliminary understanding which gives us some sort of, again, idea how to live in this world. There is no point of fear. As one of the first presidents, I don't remember who exactly, Benjamin Franklin or somebody, one of the first founding fathers of America, has said that you shouldn't fear anything besides the fear itself. So you should fear to become fearful. This is what you should do. Otherwise, there is no cause for fear. Fear is a very fearful thing. But if you understand that God is behind everything, then it's like this Adhyatma Deepa, the spiritual knowledge, illuminates everything, and you understand. Yes, I'm not in control. God has created everything. God will take care of me, and ultimately, He wishes me well. He is not a jealous, old, very angry person who is just, trying to get revenge for his frustration in life. He is not a frustrated old person, luckily for us. So that's so the Sarga and Nirodha, and this is the first meaning. And therefore, Sarga is being repeated so many times in Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's amazing, but in first three cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam, in second and the third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this elementary creation is repeated 6 or 7 times, or even more. It's even very difficult. Again and again and again, Srimad-Bhagavatam repeats the same thing. And I will explain a little later when we talk about third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, why it is so. Because we know that initially Narada Muni told Vyasadeva, you described the sweet pastimes of the Lord. You didn't describe the sweet pastimes of the Lord. And Srila Vyasadeva said, yes, I will describe sweet pastimes of the Lord. And then 7 or more times he describes creation again and again and again. This is how the elements of creation are created. Why it is so? Not without a reason. There is a very serious reason. And, the first understanding that gives you some sort of initial spiritual understanding of reality. Sarga and Nirodha is God. It's a very general description of God. He's in charge of creation, this world, and he's in charge of destruction. So there is nothing to fear. First of all, you're not in control of your birth. Somehow or other you were born. So you were born by God. So, and it's good. You feel it's good, right? I exist. It's good. It's a good thing, perhaps. And then, but then, then Nirodha should be taken in the same way. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Visarga, Stanam, Poshanam, Uti, Manvantara, and Ishanukatha is compared with sun. So the next 7. The next 7 topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam this is the description. This is the meaning, which is like sun. And let's talk about sun a little bit. What sun gives us? Sun, as I said, completely dissipates the darkness of the night, completely dissipates fears. You know, everyone becomes enthusiastic to work. And basically, when we talk about Srimad-Bhagavatam, the sun gives us the greater context, as I said. This is, I wanted to say a few words about this, this topic or this concept of context. You can only understand the meaning through the context. If we take a meaning of the word can be completely different according to the context, according to the sentence. You know, I has been working as a translator, and I know it is, you know, in different contexts, the same word should be translated differently because semantic field of the word in different languages are different. In any case, the point here is that to understand the meaning, you have to know the context. Without the context, you cannot understand the meaning. And that's exactly why normal, quote-unquote, people cannot understand the meaning of their life, because they don't understand the greater context of their life. That's why the first question which we should ask, why I have been born? Who I am? Who I am means what is the context of reality? Because people tend to isolate everything from the context. When the science is trying to isolate everything from the context, studying some isolated subject matters by cutting off the connections with everything else because it's too complicated, the reality is too complicated for them to study, ultimately it gets a very wrong understanding of the meaning. They're trying to extract the meaning, to figure out the meaning, but ultimately they cannot because they lost the context. They don't know the context, how it functions in reality. You know, I remember it was very clear, my own experience. I was working as a scientist of biological science on a cellular level, and I was trying to understand how the life works. But to understand how the life works, I have to kill everything. And, you know, but you cannot understand life by killing. It's not the way to understand life. So, and that's exactly the mistake which scientists do. They always try to make the context as narrow as possible because they cannot really have the broader context. And that's exactly the difference with the science of Krishna. Because the science of Krishna, which is explained in Srimad-Bhagavatam, is trying to explain to us the complete full context of life. And that's exactly what we will get when we read Srimad-Bhagavatam and understand these 7 topics, as I said. Then we will see how the karma works, what are the beneficial ways of karma and, you know, of pravriti mark or of enjoyment, how you should enjoy in this life and how you should not enjoy in this life, and how you should renounce this world and how you should not renounce this world. So, because we always tend to make mistakes by narrowing the context. We don't understand what was there before, what will be there after. We're trying to make the meaning from the very limited vision which we have, and therefore we make mistake and therefore we suffer. We cannot enjoy properly. You can only enjoy properly. You know, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is not about, you know, to make you suffer in this world. Srimad-Bhagavatam, as all the scriptures, help you to live happily in this world. But to live happily in this world, in the true sense of the word, you have to understand how this whole reality works. Then you will be able to enjoy in a wholesome way. You will enjoy in this world. I'm sure I will be condemned by many and praised by also many by saying this, but that's a fact. Srimad-Bhagavatam is explaining these topics of Visarga, Stanam, Poshanam, Utaya, all these things, Poshanam, how you should nourish yourself. What is Poshanam? Poshanam basically means to live the healthy life in this world. How you do it? Srimad-Bhagavatam does explain this, no doubt about it. So, but Srimad-Bhagavatam explains this by giving a very broad picture. And when you have this broad picture, you will be able to understand how to do this, because people, what they do, first they try to enjoy, it doesn't work, they suffer, and they renounce the world also in improper way. So you can enjoy properly and improperly. You can renounce this world also properly and improperly. So when Srila Sutta Goswami compares Srimad-Bhagavatam with the sun, he says that if you understand deeper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, when you understand the first meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the effect will be you become fearless. No point of fear. No point of fearing death. No problem. When you understand the deeper meaning of life of Srimad-Bhagavatam, you will be able to live properly in this world, to enjoy this world and to renounce this world in a very wholesome way, not in an unhealthy way. We can see that devotees, they come to devotional service to respond to Krishna consciousness, and initially they renounce everything, and they do it in a very horrible way. They give everything up, they break all the relationship, they, condemn everyone. And then after some time, they understand that something doesn't work and they try to enjoy. And again, improperly. And it just doesn't work. Therefore, Srimad-Bhagavatam as a sun gives you this wholesome, complete understanding, which is not easy. But if you understand how this reality works, by understanding all these topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam and how the Lord is behind everything, then you will be able to live properly. And this is more or less, you will be able to live properly, and ultimately you will be able to get mukti, liberation. This second meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam is how to live properly without being entangled in this world, and how to ultimately get liberation. Therefore, the second meaning is about Visarga, Stanam, Poshanam, Uti, Manvantara, Isanupatha, and Mukti. And Mukti. This is the 7 topics. So this is the gift of Srimad-Bhagavatam. If you understand a preliminary meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, you become fearless. If you understand the secondary meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, you ensure your liberation. You know that you're not being entangled in this world. You know that you're properly building your relationship without being too much attached to it, and so on and so forth. That's the meaning of the second batch of the topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And then the third metaphor, which has been given by Srila Vyasadeva himself in the third verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam, Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Palam, Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. So it is Galitam Palam. This is the ripened fruit, Nigama Kalpataror, of the tree of the Vedas, of the tree of Nigamas, tree of Vedic scripture. It's like desire tree can fulfill any desire. In the Vedas, there are procedures, methods, processes to get anything you desire, anything you want. Therefore, it's Nigama Kalpataru. But Nigama Kalpatarur Galitam Palam, the ripened fruit of this tree, desire tree, the fruit which the tree himself wants to give to you is Srimad-Bhagavatam. And basically it means the emotional rasamalayam. It's emotional ecstasy, which you can derive from Srimad-Bhagavatam if you understand it on a third or deepest meaning of the deepest level of the meaning. It basically means that you read Srimad-Bhagavatam, and we read Srimad-Bhagavatam in one way. Shukadev Goswami reads Srimad-Bhagavatam in a completely different way. Maharaja Pariksit hears Srimad-Bhagavatam on a different level. And if the real devotee who has the key to the third level of meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam reads Srimad-Bhagavatam, even this apparently dry verses or even creation, they become completely ecstatic. They will just jump and sing, and they will come into ecstasy. And of course, the Ashraya, the 10th topic of Srimad-Bhagavatam, is about this. Ashraya, or description of Krishna, is to give you the emotional connection with the Supreme Absolute Truth. But again, we have to go step by step. Before we get to this, it's only available to Bhavukas and Rasikas. Or Bhavukas, they are those who are on the level of Bhava. And Rasikas, they are those who are on the level of Prema. So this emotional content or emotional meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam is available, but first you have to reach the level of Bhava and Prema, then you will be able to enjoy this ripened fruit of the Vedas. But before, even sun is good enough, even spiritual lamp is also not bad. So this is three meanings of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And as I promised to you, our next topic will be very short, concise, but still meaningful description or review of the all the 12 cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's interesting that the second metaphor which we gave compares Srimad-Bhagavatam with the sun, and we know that the sun has 12 zodiacs. And the sun in the 12 zodiacs behaves differently. Sun in Mesha, how you call it? Aries is different than the sun is in Taurus. The sun in Taurus is different than the sun in Mithuna. Sun in Mithuna is different than sun is anyway, mixing the Sanskrit names with the English names. But everyone knows that there is 12 zodiacs, and the sun is different. Like now the sun is in Cancer. So the sun in Cancer is better, at least in India, than the sun is in previous zodiac. It's very hot when it's in Mithuna. And it means basically that Srimad-Bhagavatam also has 12 cantos. And in the 12th cantos, the Ashraya, Krishna is being described, but described in a different ways. As much as the sun behaves differently in the 12 zodiacs, and the description of Ashraya of the same topic, the main topic of Srimad-Bhagavatam, is different in 12 different cantos. And if we take the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, what is the meaning or how to make sense of everything which is being described in the first canto? Of course, first canto is an introduction. First and second canto is more or less introduction to the whole book. But the main meaning of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is Adhikari Tattva. the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is explaining this tattva of adhikar. Who is adhikari to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam properly? Who is the adhikari or qualified person to speak Srimad-Bhagavatam, and who is the adhikari or qualified person to listen Srimad-Bhagavatam? Basically, the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is extremely important because it lays down the methodology to understand the whole book. If we don't understand the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will not be able to understand the whole book because we will not be equipped with the methods of understanding this book. As I explained in our seminar on a number of occasions and times, Srimad-Bhagavatam is not an ordinary book. It's not the book which you can just read and just by reading understand everything. Because this is the approach, this is the Avaroha Pantha. This is the, this is Aroha Pantha. This is the approach when we are trying to understand. We are higher than Srimad-Bhagavatam. If we try to study Srimad-Bhagavatam in a normal, quote-unquote way, in a way we study other subjects, we will be cheated. And actually, this is the fourth metaphor which is there in Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavatam is like a Mahini Murti. Srimad-Bhagavatam, you can read Srimad-Bhagavatam and study Srimad-Bhagavatam. You will not be able to understand anything about Srimad-Bhagavatam. You will be cheated. You will not get the proper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavatam is specifically composed in such a way to cheat you. If you employ the improper method of understanding Srimad-Bhagavatam. And therefore, the understanding of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is so extremely important. If you understand the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, you will get the key which will help you to open every other canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And basically, it is explained in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam by three examples. There are three examples in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam of transmission of Srimad-Bhagavatam. First example is Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisaranya. Second example is Narada Muni and Vyasadeva, or the Bhaktivedantas, the sages who came to Narada Muni. This is the second story within the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, how Narada Muni is teaching Vyasadeva Srimad-Bhagavatam and how he himself received Srimad-Bhagavatam from Bhaktivedantas. And of course, the third and ultimate story about transmitting of Srimad-Bhagavatam in a very successful way is Maharaja Pariksit and Sukadeva Goswami. For transmission to be successful, certain conditions have to be established. And these conditions are indirectly and quite directly, actually, explained in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And these three examples are there, not without a reason, because these three examples is a description of the first level of qualification for the listener and hearer of Srimad and the speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Second level and the third level, highest level. The first level is Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisaranya. And this is the most accessible level for us, because it is very clearly said in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam that the sages of Naimisaranya are not free from material desires. They have material desires. Therefore, they're engaged in this ritualistic sacrifice. And it is specifically said that they become more or less smoked by the smoke of sacrifice. If you're sitting too much by the fire, you become, the smoke enters into you. And this metaphor is there to give you understanding that their heart is not completely pure. And this is a very good news. You don't have to be pure to receive Srimad-Bhagavatam. You don't have to be 100% pure to receive Srimad-Bhagavatam. You still will be able to receive Srimad-Bhagavatam. But you have to have the complete faith into the speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And the speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam has to be qualified. And Srila Prabhupada specifically explains that some other technicalities of this method of receiving Srimad-Bhagavatam. You have to go gradually, canto by canto. You shouldn't jump into the 10th canto because you will not be able to understand it properly. You definitely have to have complete faith and respect. And this faith and respect is described by the word shushrushu. Shushrushu means you have to have a very strong desire to hear, and not only to hear, but also to act, to serve. Shushrushu literally means desire to hear, but the conventional meaning of shushrushu means desiring to serve. So this is the minimum qualification for us to be successful in receiving Srimad-Bhagavatam. If we have this, if we want to serve, if we have faith into the speakers of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and if the speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam qualifies. And what is the qualification for speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam? He has to have blessings of his superiors. He has to be a disciple himself. Basically, what is said about Sutta Goswami, he's praised by the sages of Naimisaranya for being a disciple. You know, if we hear somebody, for us to trust him and to be sure that we receive proper knowledge, we have to know that he's connected, that he's not concocting it from his own fertile brain, and he's not doing it himself. He's representing his own spiritual master, and he speaks on his behalf, and he received blessings from his spiritual master. This is how the indirectly the qualifications are being described. So that's very practical knowledge. If we want to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam, then what we have to make sure that this works, that this is there. I already spoke for 1 hour, but I will speak for a few more minutes at least to finish this review of the first canto.
Maharaj, we can continue for as long as you want.
Huh?
We can continue, Maharaj. We would like that the whole, yeah.
So I will not be able to give a review of the second canto, but at least first canto I want to finish. So it's interesting, but there is more to say about this. The second pair of Srimad-Bhagavatam, of the speaker and the listener of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva and Narada Muni, or Narada Muni and the Bhaktivedantas who came to him, they have higher qualification. Definitely, Vyasadeva is much more qualified than the sages of Naimisaranya. And Narada Muni is more qualified than Sutta Goswami himself. And even in the previous life, Narada Muni was very qualified, and his qualification was described. He was very humble. He was absolutely ready to serve, and he was very renounced. The difference, if we look at this different pair of speaker and listeners, is they have higher level of knowledge and higher level of renunciation. As I said, that the lowest possible qualification is the sages of Naimisaranya, who are very pure, no doubt about it, but still have tinges of material desires. They don't have to be 100% renounced. The second level is when you're completely renounced from this world. When we study very carefully this other story about Narada Muni, who is receiving Srimad-Bhagavatam from the sages, we will see he's already completely renounced from this world. He's not interested in this world. He's not interested even as a child, even in playing. He's not really interested. He's mumuksu from the beginning. He wants liberation. He wants to get the higher knowledge. And very humbly, he serves the sages for a long time. And not for a long time, for 4 months, and then receives their remnants, gets their mantra, their mercy, and ultimately realizes the Lord. And the same way, Vyasadeva is being described as very, very knowledgeable and also very renounced. The second level of this. And the third level is the highest level of renunciation and highest level of knowledge. This is how Srimad-Bhagavatam is trying to explain to us in indirect way this Adhikar Tattva. When we study how Sukadeva Goswami is being described, he's completely renounced from the very beginning. Yes, what is this? What is this verse? Next one. Huh? Pravrajantam, Anupetam, Apeta, Kritim, Vaipayanam, Virahakata, Rajava, Putreti, Tanmayatayo, Karavo Vinedus, Sarva Bhutamune, Vidayam Munimanatosmi. He's already completely renounced. More renounced than Narada Muni, more renounced than Vyasadeva. When Vyasadeva runs behind his son, the ladies who are Apsaras who are, taking baths in the pond, they become shy and they dress themselves. And Vyasadeva asked them, why you didn't dress when my son was crying? He's a young boy. They said, we know he's not interested in this. But you are still, to a certain extent. So this is the third level of the speaker and the listener. And the listener, Maharaja Pariksit, are being described also very beautifully. His qualifications are described in the 12th chapter of the first canto, and after that, starting from his birth. And what we can see also, what we can notice by studying this descriptions in the first canto, we will see that the more somebody is qualified, when the more qualified pair of speakers and listeners are being described, then the more emphasis is given to the listener. In the beginning, there is more emphasis in the qualification of the speaker. When we're dealing with the neophyte devotees as ourselves, it's more important than the speaker is qualified. There is less emphasis on the qualification of the listener because there is no qualification in the listener. So it just doesn't really exist. The only qualification is your desire to hear and your certain level of humility, respect to the speaker. But the speaker has to be qualified to impress upon us the deeper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam. But when we go to the higher levels of this transmission of this transcendental knowledge, then the listener has to be extremely qualified. Sukadeva Goswami will not come to a Brooklyn temple or any other temple and all of a sudden start speaking. First of all, because he is not dressed. He probably will not be allowed into the temple room. He will probably be driven away. And he's not shaven up, obviously, and there are so many other discrepancies. What I mean to say is that Sukadeva Goswami will not explain Srimad-Bhagavatam to anyone and everyone. He will only explain Srimad-Bhagavatam to somebody who is qualified. And who is qualified? Maharaja Pariksit is qualified. Even if somebody else in the audience will ask him to explain Srimad-Bhagavatam, he will say, yeah, right, very good. Hare Krishna. I don't have time. But when he met with this completely, extremely qualified person who doesn't have any other desire, who is completely accounting, he doesn't have any other goal, then the heart of the speaker will be open and he will be able to reveal the highest truths. Therefore, to get this higher understanding, like oftentimes people, devotees in this con, they say that my guru is not qualified and this and that, or sometimes, so this guru is not qualified, that guru is not qualified. We are not qualified. When we get the proper qualification, guru will come, no doubt about it. This is one of the meanings of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. You get the guru which you deserve. And if you don't get other guru, it means that you're not qualified. Maharaja Pariksit was qualified, therefore he got the guru who is the most qualified, because Krishna is behind this. Krishna is arranging this meeting between the speaker and listener of Srimad-Bhagavatam, because Krishna wants Srimad-Bhagavatam would be spoken. So that's how it is, and we will see that the qualification of Shukadev Goswami are very briefly described in the very beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, in the second chapter, when Sutta Goswami glorifies his spiritual master, and then in the seventh chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, also that Maramas Chamunayo, there will be this description that Shukadev Goswami was completely renounced, but he was attracted by the qualities of Krishna. But for the qualification of Maharaja Pariksit, there is sevenths, eighths, ninths, tenths, 11ths, 12ths, 13ths, 14ths, 15ths, 16ths, 17ths, 18ths chapter. All chapters, they are in different ways describe the qualification of Maharaja Pariksit, even by the means of his bondage with his family members. When the qualification of Pandavas are being described indirectly, it indicates what is the quality of their descendant, Maharaja Pariksit. But also in these chapters, which are directly or indirectly describe the qualification of Maharaja Pariksit or of the listener of Srimad-Bhagavatam, also very important things are being said. Basically, what it means, what we are describing now, both speaker and the listener have to be devotees. And there are three grades or three levels of the qualification of devotees. We know Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. So both listener and the speaker have to be qualified either on one level or another level or another level. They have to be devotees. It means they have to have bhakti. Maharaja Pariksit already has bhakti of the highest level. He met with Krishna in the womb. There is hardly anyone else in this world who met Krishna face by face, eye by eye, in the womb. So he is already extremely qualified. But please listen very importantly. Ultimately, what Srimad-Bhagavatam wants to say, you have to have bhakti in the beginning to receive more bhakti by listening Srimad-Bhagavatam. And this minimal level of bhakti is that you're humble, you're respectful, you're eager to hear, and this is how this qualification is being described. But because bhakti is very difficult to describe, what Srimad-Bhagavatam is describing, instead, Srimad-Bhagavatam is describing the extrinsic characteristics of bhakti, concomitant characteristics of bhakti, which are jnana and vairagya. If somebody has bhakti, he will have Jnana and Vairagya. It is the very beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It is said, Janayata Vairagyam. So if you have Bhakti, then Jnana and Vairagya, the renunciation and knowledge will manifest within your heart. So what is being described in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is that how the Bhakti manifests differently on 3 different levels, and how it gives you different level of knowledge and different level of renunciation. Like if we take 8th chapter of the first canto, we will see amazing knowledge of Queen Kunti. Why this knowledge is there? She herself says, I'm a woman. I'm not qualified to study Vedas. According to strict rules of Varnashrama, women were not allowed to study Vedas. Still, she gives amazing knowledge. And actually, in the 10th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the ladies of Hastinapur, they express their knowledge from their heart. In the 11th chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the queens of Dwaraka, they express their knowledge, and citizens of Dwaraka. It's all ladies. Why ladies? Because this knowledge is not a theoretical knowledge. It's a knowledge which comes into the heart from your bhakti. If you have bhakti, then the knowledge will be there. You will be able, and how this knowledge will manifest, you will be able to live your life properly. Queen Kunti lived a very difficult life, and first she explains how by living her life, she deserved this knowledge which she gained. She actually explains how the knowledge came to her through the life of devotion. So this life of devotion qualifies you to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam. If you live the life of a devotee, you will be able to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam. And we can see, there are many different examples in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Queen Kunti, Bhisma there, he expresses his knowledge and his renunciation. He expresses his amazing knowledge, so much so that he is able to convince Maharaja Yudhisthira to take the kingdom, whereas Krishna couldn't do this. Krishna wants to say that he's more knowledgeable than myself. Why? Because he's a Bhakta. He's not a scholar and a, Orthodox meaning of this word. He's maybe not a scholar, but he knows this. He knows all the truth and all this wisdom from within the heart because he's a devotee. And naturally, Jnana and Vairagya comes to you. And then the Pandavas, they are so renounced, and when they hear that Krishna is not there, they completely lose the interest. And, Dhritarashtra is a contrast to this in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. He's not a devotee. Therefore, even when he hears Vidura, it doesn't really click what Vidura wants to say to him. So that's again the example of how the knowledge can be unsuccessful. This knowledge of Srimad-Bhagavatam is not necessarily, there is no assurance that the knowledge of Srimad-Bhagavatam will be transmitted, but the only assurance that it will be successfully transmitted is your devotion to Lord Krishna, to the personal Lord, from the very beginning. Your faith, Shushrushok Sradhanasya, Vasudeva Katharuchi. So if you from the very beginning have this devotion, and if you upgrade your devotion through listening Srimad-Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, then your ability to understand the deeper meaning of Srimad-Bhagavatam will be increased. And ultimately, you will get the same result as Maharaja Pariksit. What is the result of listening Srimad-Bhagavatam? Maharaja Pariksit, he became Gopi Bhava. Our acharyas explained that he obtained Gopi Bhava. He obtained the body of Bhava, which is more important. It's not body in our gross sense. It's a spiritual body, emotional body. he obtained this emotional relationship with Krishna as a gopi. So this is what is being explained in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And there are few more topics, important topics in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is also for us important to understand what is there. Kali Yuga is the most very important secondary topic in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, because Kali Yuga makes everyone disqualified, but Srimad-Bhagavatam is immune to the vices of Kali Yuga. And therefore, Maharaja Pariksit, he was immune to the vices of Kali Yuga. He was able to conquer over Kali. He stopped the influence of Kali. And there is very important another implication from this stories of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is that how did he stop the influence of Kali? By stopping these 4 sinful activities. And if we want to be immune to the vices of the age of Kali, we have to strictly follow 4 regulative principles. That's a very important qualification, which is again there. As I said, all the topics of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is about the qualification, how to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam. What is the methodology? What is the process of receiving this knowledge of Srimad-Bhagavatam? Not theoretical knowledge, but the practical knowledge, realized knowledge. As I said, Paroxetine. Paroxetine means the knowledge which goes directly into your soul, which you will not be able to lose at the moment of death. Aparoxetine you will lose because it's in your mind. You will not be able to keep this knowledge because your mind will be disturbed at the moment of death. But the realized knowledge, aparoxetine, the realized knowledge, the direct knowledge. Paroxetine you will lose. Aparoxetine you will not lose. So for that, you have to live the life of a devotee. You have to understand, you have to have the faith. Without this, you will not be able to understand anything. So this is one important secondary meaning of, or secondary topic of the first canto. And there is another important secondary topic of the first canto. First canto is basically retelling us Mahabharata. First canto is giving us the inner meaning of Mahabharata. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva, who is the author of both Srimad-Bhagavatam and Mahabharata, is retelling Mahabharata in a very short and abridged version, but giving the meaning. What is the meaning of Mahabharata? This is the devotion to the Lord. Because so many people read Mahabharata and become bewildered. What is the message of Mahabharata? So Srila Vyasadeva is repeating the same story, more or less, in the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, for those who will not be able, who was not able to understand the inner message of Mahabharata. The message of Mahabharata is devotion to Lord Krishna, nothing else. And that creates knowledge and renunciation within your heart, and Bhakti makes you qualified to understand the message of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So that's the contribution of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam to understand the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam. It gives us the key or the methodology to understand. So I guess I have to stop now. We have a few minutes to...
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. We certainly have questions. One or two questions were answered during the course in the fag end when you were explaining the qualification of both the listener as well as the speaker. But there is another question. This question was asked by Anupama Radharani Mataji, and I also had a similar question. She asked, a question was centered around There are many speakers who give classes on Srimad-Bhagavatam. Should we choose who we hear from, or should we hear from any ISKCON devotee who's giving class? What impact does an exalted devotee's SP class have on sincere listeners? That was her question. And very similar that I also wanted to ask Maharaj is that you spoke about deeper meanings, and you also spoke about a listener has to be qualified. And what Anupama Mataji is asking is about the qualification of the speaker. So, what we really want to understand from you is how do we become qualified listeners so that we can actually move from Paroksha Gyan to Aparoksha Gyan? Because Paroksha Gyan, as you explained, has a tendency to be lost at a time when you need it the most, which is death, as you explained. That's the fear we live with. And we take the shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, but continue to live in fear because our Gyan is Paroksha. So, how do we get into the Aparoksha realm where then we don't lose it, because you said that it goes direct to the soul and then it'll come in handy when you need it to the most. So, if you could please enlighten us on the question that Anupama Mataji wanted to ask and myself.
Oh, basically, I explained this already in my talk, but I can emphasize certain things which I might not have mentioned. The main qualification of a listener is not only to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, but to live life of devotion. As we see in the example of Bhisma, an example of Kunti Devi, an example of Pandavas, and in the example of Maharaja Pariksit himself. We don't know much about the lives of the sages of Naimisaranya, but of course they are generally pure. But you know, Srimad-Bhagavatam is the book which explains the greater book, the book of life. We are on the school of Krishna, and Srimad-Bhagavatam is basically, you know, it's not different from the book of our life. We have to see all the events of our life through the lens of Srimad-Bhagavatam, through the lens of devotion. Krishna is behind this, and sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes it's almost impossible. It's actually very interesting. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that there are two types of people who live in this world. Generally, devotees are not included in these two broad categories. He said there are people who are happy in this world and they are sleeping. They're happily sleeping by enjoying different illusory enjoyments of this world. And there is the second category of this world, of the people who live in this world. They are fainted because the life is too difficult and they're suffering too much. So we have two semi-conscious entities in this world. Some are sleeping and some are already fainted. So basically, what he said, none of them is really conscious. None of them is really consciously interacting with God through the events of their life. They're either sleeping or they're completely, you know, fainted because it's too painful. And this is what is happening. So Srimad-Bhagavatam is a waking up call for us. And we have to have, again, the minimal qualification for the speaker, for the listener, is to live the life of devotion and to have faith in the speaker. Answering the question is that whether we should choose between the different speakers. First of all, we anyway choose. Whether I say to you, don't choose, or I say to you, choose, we anyway choose. We have some speakers whom we like, we have some speakers whom we don't like. Some speakers tell a lot of jokes, naturally. or tell some stories. Some speakers, you know, have the ability to bring us deeper. So we anyway choose. But as a matter of etiquette, we have to respect anyone who speaks Srimad-Bhagavatam. Therefore, according to the custom, he is sitting on Vyasa-san. He is occupying the position of Vyasa, whether he is, you know, deserving or not. We're respecting in his person, we're respecting Srila Vyasadeva. He's sitting on the place of Vyasadeva, and hopefully Vyasa-san will give him some power to speak properly, because it's the seat of Vyasa. So, and it does have an effect. Actually, it does have an effect. It's not a joke. If you sit on an elevated seat and you really understand that you're supposed to speak on behalf of very great people in Parampara. So, you know, you may become the transparent mediator. But the minimum qualification is that he has to be a disciple himself, as I said. As Sutta Goswami, his qualification is described in this way. Your gurus blessed you. You have all kinds of knowledge. You know 6 systems of philosophy. It is also said there, Srila Prabhupada says that somebody who speaks Srimad-Bhagavatam has to know 6 systems of philosophy. And of course, you know, Bhakta, John, may not know the details of Vaisheshika system of philosophy on the ayah, but nevertheless, he's a Bhakta, he's sincere, he's sitting on the seat of Vyasadeva, and he's a disciple. If he's a disciple, Prabhupada says, what is this art? This art is art of submissive hearing. This is Prabhupada's phrase, the art of submissive hearing of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And the speaker is qualified. It means he's not changing the message. He is transmitting the same message in a very humble way. So in this way, he's qualified. And you know, if you come to the class and somebody is sitting there, you have to respect Vyasadeva, you have to respect the system. Srila Prabhupada was very emphatic. He wanted that all his disciples would give classes. So we don't discriminate in this regard. But we also stress this point that somebody has to be a disciple.
Thank you, Maharaj. We will move to the next question. This is a question from Murlidhar Prabhu. His question is, how to reach the level of reading Bhagavatam as a ripened fruit juice? Because in my lifetime, it seemed, sorry, yeah. He says, in my life, it seems hard reading, completing Bhagavatam once. How to overcome this practical difficulty?
No, it all boils down to the desire. Actually, the qualification, the main qualification of the listener is the desire. You know, why Maharaja Pariksit was so qualified? Because he didn't have any other desires. He knew that here is somebody who can answer all my questions. And ultimately, this is the book which can answer all my questions. All my questions. If I understand that this book will answer all my questions, I will not waste my time by reading some other literature, news, Google News or Facebook News. So, you know, we have long enough life to read Srimad-Bhagavatam many times. If we are not able to read Srimad-Bhagavatam, it basically means the lack of desire. And lack of desire means lack of faith. When we have faith, we have enthusiasm. When we have enthusiasm, we have energy. When we have energy, we have time because the desire is there. Ultimately, it so boils down to the desire. And desire comes if this understanding of this moment, this wow moment come that, here's the book which can answer all my questions. This is actually the title of this chapter which we are reading. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So if we understand this, then there is no need to read some other book, some psychology book or some other book. If we master Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will definitely understand everything. And we have enough time, no doubt. Maharaja Pariksit had only 7 days.
Thank you, Maharaj. That was a question on behalf of all of us, I would say, thanks to Muralidhar Prabhu, and that reply of yours is also all of us.
In this other
okay, you have a question?
Capture a wide context of Srimad Bhagavatam requires the ability to think broadly. And if devotee has not this skill, well, Srimad Bhagavatam will broaden our scope. There's no doubt about it. Srimad Bhagavatam will give us the broader perspective and ultimately will give us the perspective which will enable us to think broadly. Why do we think in a very narrow manner? Only because we're not capable of, because we're not seeing the broader context. What's really happening with us? We have a very narrow lens and of our own experience. We have experience of some suffering in this world, of some enjoyment of this world. And usually when we see something, we interpret the meaning of this through this our own experience, which is very narrow. So what Srimad Bhagavatam will do, Srimad Bhagavatam will immediately smash your narrow approach to the life. Srimad Bhagavatam will say, you only suffer, you don't understand the meaning of your sufferings because you don't understand what was before, what was the cause of the suffering. You don't understand what Krishna has in store for you, what he will give to you after the suffering will end. You don't understand this. And Srimad Bhagavatam will explain that life is not as narrow as we see. And therefore, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, our scope, our intelligence will be broadened ultimately. And then we will be able to understand Srimad Bhagavatam in a more broad way. So it's a process, it's a self-qualifying process. Yes, we are not able to understand Srimad Bhagavatam because our perspective is too narrow now. But while reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we will broaden our perspective, and that will ultimately give us more deep understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam has to be read again and again and again. Srimad Bhagavatam is sadhana. Reading of Srimad Bhagavatam is sadhana, and there is a very specific sutra in Vedanta Sutra which says that sadhana has to be repeated again and again and again because we have problems. We have impurities in our heart which are being removed through the repetition of the same process. I don't know how to. Wait. There are a few more questions I will answer now. Yes. Will a highly qualified listener similarly enjoy Srimad Bhagavatam from different levels of speakers? Yes. We have an example of Srivas Thakur who came to Srimad Bhagavatam class by Devananda Pandit. And Devananda Pandit, even though he didn't understand the higher meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam and was explaining some dry philosophy, Srivas Thakur, he was in complete ecstasy. So much so that he even fainted right there in the class, which was not really appreciated by the students of Devananda Pandit. So it's definitely effect. The qualification of the listener is more important than the qualification of the speaker, because it is Vyasadev Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is Shukadev Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is the Srimad-Bhagavatam of Srila Prabhupada. They already transmitting very high knowledge. It's just we are not qualified to receive it. Otherwise, it's not. So it's more important to understand the qualification of the listener or hearer. How is Paroxetine different from a Paroxetine in practice? See, Paroxetine is by definition para Aqsa. This is the gyan which you don't have yourself. Somebody else has this knowledge. He tells you and you receive it. This is indirect knowledge. Aparokshagyan means the direct knowledge. You know, you may theoretically know that you're the spirit soul, you're not this body. But since you don't know it in practice, you're still afraid of death and you still suffer so much. But if you, like a very simple example, those people who have near-death experience, let's say successful near-death experience, who went through this experience, left their body, saw their body, completely understood they're not this body, have some mystical experience, encounter with higher beings. Usually when they come back, their life very drastically changes. They become better people, they become fearless, they become very joyful, they have the broader perspective of life, so on and so forth. So they have aparokshagyan, direct knowledge. It's very direct knowledge. If you see your own body, and if you see that your body is dead, and you still see it, so you understand I am not this body. But the beauty of Srimad-Bhagavatam is that you can get Paroxetine by reading Srimad-Bhagavatam or by listening to Srimad-Bhagavatam. You can get some sort of experience. But again, it requires qualification. If you hear in a proper mood, then the understanding will become deeper, will go deeper than on the level of your intellect. It will go much deeper. It will leave the impression in your soul, basically. That's what it is. Very deep impression, spiritual impression. But it requires, and it will take some time, but that's the point that when Sukadev Goswami was listening, I was explaining it last time. When Sukadev Goswami listened to Srimad-Bhagavatam, he didn't only listen to Srimad-Bhagavatam, he saw Srimad-Bhagavatam. And when he was retelling Srimad-Bhagavatam, he was not just remembering, oh, what was this verse? I don't remember what was this. Oh, do you remember what was this verse after that? No, he was explaining what he saw in front of himself. And therefore, he was able to speak even what some of the hearers of Srimad-Bhagavatam sing. He was Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Muni Manatosmi. He is the Muni who can enter everyone's heart. He became on the level of the super soul because it's only super soul who can enter everyone's heart. But he is Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Muni Manatosmi. I'm going down to this Sukadev Goswami who can enter everyone's heart. Why? Because this is the level of realization he was on, and this is in practice. So at least we have this example, and it means that by listening to Srimad-Bhagavatam long enough and properly enough, we will be able to get aparokshagyan, not just parokshagyan. Please, okay. Just yesterday, I had the question why in chapter 19, Sukadev Goswami has more importance than Vyasadeva. So class I could, okay. This is just understand, because Sukadeva Goswami is the high level of understanding the initiation lesson, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because if I understand properly, Sukadeva Goswami is the Maharaja's Pariksit master. Yes, Sukadeva Goswami is the Maharaja's Pariksit master. You understood it properly. Okay, there's no more questions?
We do have 2 or 3 more questions, but it'll be nice if we can cover that. Maharaj, is it possible?
Yeah, quickly, yes.
Okay. So, all right. So there's one question from Radha Bhav Gaur Prabhu, who says, who's asked basically, we hear about NASA discovering various millions of galaxies and endless stars. When we hear about various universes in Srimad-Bhagavatam, does it mean these galaxies?
I lost you.
So we hear about NASA discovering various,
Yes, Does it mean that galaxies are different universes?
Yeah.
It's actually a very interesting question, and I was always wondering how it is. Jiva Goswami in one place explained then when it is said that there is this layers of the elements within outside of the universe which constitute the universal shell. This universe is an egg, therefore it's called Brahmanda. And in the outer covering of the shell, these layers of the elements, and if how does it combine with the picture which we see around us? But Jiva Goswami explains actually very beautifully. He says that the eggs are there on all levels. There are different eggs. It's like Russian matryoshkas, this matryoshka, one doll and another doll and another doll and another doll. So this elementary Brahmanda, the original Brahmanda, which is there, has these outer coverings of the elements. But within this bigger egg, there are smaller eggs of different galaxies. So it's quite possible that these galaxies which we see around us are different universes within the bigger Brahmanda, bigger universe, which is covered by these elementary eggs. So it's quite possible, according to Srila Jiva Goswami. It's not that, smaller universes also covered. No, within this big egg, there are many smaller eggs.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, another Prabhu. So we have 2 quick questions. One is from Vikram Prabhu. His question is to understand, he would like to have your guidance for beginners like me to understand Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam with the best of our abilities. Shall we start Bhagavad Gita first and then try for Srimad-Bhagavatam, or we can do both parallel?
I would say you should do both parallel, as Prabhupada established. He wanted to have classes on Bhagavad Gita in the evening, classes of Srimad-Bhagavatam in the morning. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada's explanation of Bhagavad Gita is from the perspective of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sometimes people have this strange idea. I want to understand Bhagavad Gita without this as it is, so to speak. But Bhagavad Gita as it is the Bhagavad Gita which is written from the perspective, broader perspective of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Again, the same sort of mentality or approach which is there, people try to narrow the context. But actually, you can understand the meaning. The broader the context you have, the more proper meaning you will derive. So if we try to understand Bhagavad Gita without Srimad-Bhagavatam, it will be difficult. But Srimad-Bhagavad Gita, in the light of Srimad-Bhagavatam, will become it's very easy to understand Bhagavad Gita from the perspective of Srimad-Bhagavatam. because it places everything into proper perspective and makes it very logical. People, when they try to understand, like I read some scholars, they try to, decipher different layers in Bhagavad Gita. This was written first, then something was added, then somebody else came and he added something else. They become completely lost. They don't see the whole thing. They don't have samanvaya, the harmonious whole or harmonious understanding. And Srimad-Bhagavatam gives this perspective, which makes Bhagavad Gita very easy. So you should do both, definitely.
Thank you, Maharaj. And this is the last question now from Anupama Mataji. Her question is, Maharaj, you mentioned that on the first level of reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, one will know how to enjoy the material world. Can you please give example? Sorry?
Not immediately. Don't be in a hurry.
Okay. So on the first level of reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, one will know how to enjoy the material world. Can you please give example from our history of personalities who have done this, and if they went on to become bhaktas?
Well, Dhruva Maharaj was one of them. For example, he fulfilled his desire. He lived 36,000 years here. He went to Vaikuntha planet, so on and so forth. Srimad Bhagavatam explains how, the proper attachment and the proper detachment. And it will be very clearly when we see, when we understand, how each canto of Srimad Bhagavatam progressively deals with this subject matter. So, as I explained, what Srimad Bhagavatam is about, Visarga means secondary creation. Visarga means how our body is created, why our body has this constitution, why somebody has Vata constitution, somebody else Pitta constitution, Kapha constitution, this and that. So that's Visarga, secondary creation. From secondary creation, Dunham is there, the place where we live. Why do we live in this environment? How our environment is created by us. How we influence our environment by our mentality. And then Sthanam Poshanam, and how we maintain our life living in this environment. So this is all. If we know the secrets, if we know, how I'm constituted, what is the environment, how I should create this environment, how I should get the maintenance, that ultimately the Lord is behind and He's maintaining me. How, if I have this point of view, this very clear vision, then I will be able to live in this world and not being entangled. Enjoy means, basically live happy life, as it is said in Srimad-Bhagavatam, live healthy life. What is this verse? Anyway, in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Kamasi Nendriya Pritir. You should satisfy your indriyas, the desires of your indriyas, of your senses, in a healthy way, but it should not be the goal of your existence. You should have the higher goal to inquire the truth, to understand the truth. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong in living healthy life. So yeah, this is the verse. Kamasi Nendri Nato. Again. Narto Jivet Yava. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for this wonderful session again with you. We thank all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who attended this session. And we will have in the next, after 2 weeks, that means next Friday and the Friday after, we'll have the next session. Maharaj, will that be on the second canto? We have done the first canto review?
Yeah, we've done first canto, yes.
Okay.
Second, that will be probably a few cantos.
All right, Maharaj. So thank you so much. His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Gopika Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpataru kripa sindhudeva cha. Itanam pavnebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo
vaishnavebhyo
namaha.
namaha. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj. Dandavata pranam.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Radha Babu, Hare Krishna.
Welcome. Welcome. Hare
Dandavat
Krishna,
pranam Maharaj. Dandavat
Good to
pranam
see you.
Maharaj.
Dandavat pranam. Maharaj has left. So
Yes.
good to see you,
He's in
Prabhu.
Moscow. He's in Moscow.
He's in Govardhan.